episode 56 of the Unscripted Company podcast, the number one unscripted podcast on the planet. Mark my words, it's truth. Fact check.
It's truth.
You can't. I know we got a lot of things we want to talk about. I know, at least on my side, I got some humanoid robots. Are humans screwed? Are our days numbered? Like, are we going to have these robots walking around our house? Maybe, potentially. I've also been tracking banks are flying in a lot of gold, physical gold bars from overseas. Makes you wonder what's going on there. We got some explanations, some conspiracy. Who knows? I got another fun one I'll save for the end if we get to it. I know on your side, I saw you had a couple topics. Do you want to give a brief overview of what you might want to talk about?
Yeah. So, probably a lot of people have heard about the DOGE stuff happening and everything. A lot of federal stuff happening. So definitely going to touch on some stuff on that. Also, a new potential coronavirus. Yay! Oh my gosh.
The sequel's always better than the original, right?
The sequel is always better. And if you have the current COVID vaccine, then it may not help you with this. So good luck, everybody. And then just some current or this seasonal type weather plans for what they're expecting the weather to be like, because we are vastly approaching tornado season. And so these are some predictions by a couple of meteorologists that I follow from time to time. So just some different things on that. There is a question I didn't have on here, but I'm going to pose this question again later tonight, but I'm not going to go into it just yet. I want to wait till after we talk about everything first. But yeah.
Cool. And as always, it is Unscripted Company. So who knows where the conversation will go. We have some ideas, but if it's not your first time around the block with us, we might not even get to all those topics, but we'll do our best to get there. To kick us off though, Riley, do you have a question of the week for us?
I do have a question of the week.
What you got?
What if everybody's consciousness was swapped with some random person every 10 years?
Ooh, okay. I guess just what if. The first thing that came to mind is I actually do theorize about this, or I have thought about this. It's not an original thought of mine to where, have you ever heard the theory about, I guess it is like reincarnation in a sense, but how there's a finite number of souls on Earth. So when someone dies, the soul gets recycled, for lack of a better term. So, sorry, the question was, what happens if someone's soul gets swapped with another's?
What if that was like true today? Like every 10 years that you're alive, your consciousness gets swapped into a different person, but then it also happens vice versa as well. So that means you get a new consciousness as well. So it's like you're constantly.
What if that happens every time you go to sleep?
Do you wake up feel like a different person?
I don't know. Are there some days where you wake up and you're like, it felt like you, I don't know, either slept like a brick or, you feel a little different when you wake up in the morning?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting theory though, because I mean, it's not possible, but I do, I've looked into the whole reincarnation stuff as well, and when you die, like you don't go to somebody else, but you just get like kind of like what I think of as reincarnation, because you have to think about it. Nobody remembers their birth. They don't even really remember like their first couple of years, like first year or two or so. Like it's all just distant memories. And it's like the older you get, those memories become distant because you're slowly transitioning into somebody else in the future, essentially, which is true. I mean, you do become a different person over time, but when you pass away and you go into that light is actually you being rebirthed again into somebody else.
Have you ever read those stories of, I think the ones I've heard, the majority in younger children, where they swear they've lived another life prior. And sometimes they get pieces of information. I don't want to say facts, but they get nuggets of information eerily correct to where it makes you pause and say, there's no way they rationally would have known this information. I wish I had some examples offhand, but it would be a situation where, let's make up a situation where you have a 10-year-old, let's call her Sally Sue, and she's able to have vivid memories of a war, let's say in World War I, some trench warfare scenario. And then when someone does some research and fact checks the story of what she remembers, it turns out to be a real situation that unfolded. And like the geography is correct. Some of the minor details of the battle scene are correct. and there's no way that this 10-year-old girl would have known the story or the scenario. Have you ever read on that before?
Yeah, I've actually. I feel like I've seen an article or seen something about that. It's been years, but I similarly know what you're referring to. And it was funny because I saw a picture on Facebook today, and I didn't go into the article because I just sometimes don't, because some of them can kind of be clickbaity.
Yeah.
But I read an art or I looked at this photo, and it showed an old gray still photo from like back in like the 1920s or 1930s, but the someone in the photo actually had an Apple iPad like in the photo.
I've seen that
So
where they'll find photos of someone who looks like they have like a cell phone or a smartphone, or like the faces look eerily similar, where you can see someone like it was in a photo 200 years, 100 years before, present day. And there's also stories too about some people that are proclaimed to be time travelers. And it's interesting too, because we had an episode talking about time travel, but if time travel, even theoretically, is possible, that means it's possible. Like if you can say time travel could be possible 20,000 years from now, that means someone 20,000 years from now could be able to come back here, right? So
Donald
in a
Trump.
sense, there's a fun rabbit hole to dive down with that.
We've talked about it briefly
we have.
before.
Yeah, for those of you listening and maybe you don't know what we're talking about, I'm sure someone else has written this out online somewhere, but Google Donald Trump, Barron Trump, which is his son, time travel conspiracy. There's this weird situation where there was like a book written, I think it was at the turn of the century, 19th into the 20th century. Mm-hmm. It might have been a little earlier than that, about someone named Barron Trump time traveling. And it's just so eerie. There's a lot of weird connections. Could have been a coincidence, or who knows?
Again, definitely. And again, the question I'm going to ask here in a bit, which I'll probably save it for last, it has to do with Donald Trump. And so like, I'm interested to kind of see what your updated answer might be, if it's still similar or something we can get into. But yeah, other than that, I mean, now that the question is out of the way, I mean, we do want to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments.
Yeah, let us know.
What do you think? Like if that happened, like what would you perceive that as, or like, do you think that would be weirdly or eerily interesting, or do you think it would be just like, no, like good, I don't want some random person? Because you have to think you're getting everything. It's like, what if you get the consciousness of a pedophile?
Terrifying. Terrifying. Yeah. No, it's possible. It's possible.
Or a serial killer.
Yeah.
So there's different things to think about. But on another note, how was your week this week?
Man, for the first time, I think in this podcast history, it has been a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so two major things. Actually, no, only one major thing. Other thing's kind of minor. First thing, kind of right up your alley as well. Abby and I are under contract for a new home.
Yeah?
Yeah. Set to close at the end of March.
You went and bought a new build?
We did indeed. We got one of those primo 499 rates. So kind of saves us a little pretty penny when it comes to the madness of these interest rates these days. But yeah, end of March, got a new build. It's a single story, 4-bed, 3-bath. Kind of nice. In a kind of the outskirts of a northern suburb. I'll tell you off air. Didn't want to have it recorded, but it's in one of those parts of towns where it's kind of in the middle of nowhere now, but you blink in 10 years and it's going to be in the middle of everywhere. So
my advice, get a personal inspector. Don't let anyone else inspect it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't help you with that. I mean, I could, but since you're already under contract, there's not really much I can do now. But just know that the builders, they only have their interest in heart. They don't care about the people who are buying the houses. So,
no, it's funny. About, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, my TikTok algorithm picked up on the fact that I was more interested in the home purchasing process for whatever reason. And so one of my new favorite pastimes, I don't know if you see these at all too. Maybe we've talked about this. I love watching the videos of the third-party home inspectors going into these like $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes and finding just ridiculous problems that, because, I'm preaching in the choir here, but some of these builders, they get pressured to build things rather quick. And so corners are cut and negligence occurs, and just seeing the silly mistakes that are made along the way.
Who's
So,
the builder?
I'll tell you off air, just because if I say too much, and let's just say this becomes the number one podcast in the unscripted category, someone could do their due diligence to figure out exactly where the neighborhood is. But I'll tell you off air.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's a company that very similar to Ashton Woods.
I know who it is then.
Yeah, you probably do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, happy for y'all.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's working out. One of these days I'll know what that feels like. For people who don't know, I still don't own a house and I'm a real estate agent. So
in due time, man. In due time. It all happens for a reason, the way that it does.
Yeah.
Just think about the way I think about it is like, how long ago was it that both of us were working at Applebee's?
I quit there. I mean, you left in 2018, something like that.
Yeah, because I had transferred back to work in the Austin area too for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just think about how far you've progressed from then to now.
Yeah.
And now just double that and just picture like,
I just need to get that consistent income, which right now it's been very, very stressful. Because I haven't closed anything. Again, I'm trusting in God. I'm trusting that it's all going to work out.
Yep.
But the offer that I put in for that 2.9 didn't get accepted. They accepted another offer. Have another opportunity for another one, but I'm worried that it's going to be something similar. We're going to go into multiple offer, and they're either not going to go above list like the other one or something similar. But I got to drive to Leonard, Texas tomorrow.
Where's that at? Leonard,
north
Texas.
of McKinney.
North of McKinney. Okay.
So
yeah,
I got to drive out there tomorrow. I got to leave at 9 a.m. Be there by 11.
Yeah.
Do a virtual tour. And
so when you do that, are you like holding out your phone? Like you hopping on Zoom with your phone or a tablet or something and walking around with it?
Yep.
So I'm guessing it's don't feel like you have to disclose too much, but the buyer outside of Texas, somewhere else in Texas?
No,
like
so I think I asked you about this before, but have you ever heard of Mars Ventures Capital? They're based in Austin.
It doesn't sound familiar, I don't believe, but
well, they do mostly residential. This is their first commercial property, and so I'm doing everything I can to get them under contract for something for what they're looking for.
Oh, so this is a commercial property that you're. Gotcha. I remember you told me that first part. I think I forgot the name of the organization. But...
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So I'm working that. I haven't gotten anything on my listing. It's just been chilling. Haven't gotten anything on that, so it's still kind of slow. Again, we're just being patient with everything. I mean, I definitely have goals of where I want to be by the time I'm 35, but I would really like to, again, streamline that process a little bit if I could, but I can only move so fast. And if people aren't looking to buy right now, and there's nothing I can do about that. So,
yeah, you just got to stay the course, man. Like you said, you just got to trust in God. It'll happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be one of those things you'll wake up in 5 years and you'll look back and laugh at it.
Yeah. Hopefully that's the plan.
That is the plan.
But other than that, anything else on your week?
I mean, the only other thing I was going to bring up was Abby and we've been watching. I know you're familiar with Markiplier, the YouTuber, and he does other stuff now too. But we've been watching him play through Red Dead Redemption 2, and it's crazy because I mean that game to complete it is like 40 something hours I think to actually play top to bottom, and we're in the last. We're on part 13 of like video segments of him playing through it. And this last part's 9 hours in total. It's a 9-hour video, but every other part before that was like hour 50, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So it's been wild. It's just like I played through the game. Abby's seen some segments, but it's just fun watching someone play through it because it's a super movie. Like it's a super elongated movie. Did you ever play that game at all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played it on PlayStation 5. I want to buy it on PC because it keeps going on sale, but I don't need to spend the money on it again. So
yeah.
But
what about you? Anything else going on at all? I mean,
no. I mean, I just got off of a corporate fast for our church.
How'd that go?
I finally got to eat today.
Nice. Nice. What was your first meal?
We did hamburger steaks with gravy, mashed potatoes, and some garlic toast.
Nice.
And
nice.
So we had that.
I say this jokingly. I was going to save this for a topic, but I'll use it as a joke instead. You mean for your first meal, you didn't want to drive down to Seguin, Texas, and go try that Applebee's IHOP combination restaurant?
No.
You didn't want to be able to have a Long Island iced tea with your stack of pancakes?
Nope. But yeah, so I fasted. My main fast was work because work has been really just hitting and it's not
Yeah.
hitting at the same time. And
Am I correct to say it's exhausting because the nature of the business is you are kind of on 24/7 to an extent, but because of the way the market is, like you're not feeling the successful outcomes of the time put into it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, it sucks because I'm still primarily working Zillow Flex leads. Like, I haven't gotten any personal business yet.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's because of how Zillow Flex is, which sometimes it's honestly frustrating. Like, I'm not saying I want to quit real estate. I don't, but things don't pick up soon. I have to make money at some point.
Yeah.
So if an opportunity comes my way, I got to do something.
The TikTok video I saw, which first of all, I don't know if they knew that I knew you because I had your number in my phone or what, but like it fed me that pretty fast because I was looking at, I think I might have been one of the first like 10 people to see it because when I saw it, I was like, oh, this got uploaded like
Yeah.
today. Not
Yeah,
today, but when
well,
I,
that's because I re-downloaded TikTok, and so I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, let me upload it." So,
it was pretty
but
clean.
like, for example, um, so like again with Zillow Flex, and I'm not going to stay on this too long because I do
Yeah.
want to get to other stuff. But like, when your percentages aren't where Zillow Flex wants you to be at, you get a ranking system, and so the lower you are on the ranking, the less amount of leads you'll get every month because they don't want to overwhelm you because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Now, when you say
One of
percentages, are you saying just the amount of people that are funneled to you or those that are funneled to you and convert?
So they have a conversion rate percentage. So like what my conversion rate is if I got a lead,
Yeah.
what my percentage is to convert it, and then they have an ETR, which is an engaged transfer rate. So if we get a Zillow Flex lead, we have to transfer them to Zillow Flex, only if they know that we're transferring them to Zillow Flex. So we have to have that conversation with them and say it as in like, I'm going to do this as soon as we leave here. I'm going to transfer you to my lender. I'll, fast forward, essentially all the people that I've been transferring lately have not had they have to at least have either a 90-second conversation or they have to fill out an application, one of those two things, and none of the people as of late that I've transferred over have done that, so my percentages are very low, so I'm only getting like 3 leads a month instead of like 10.
Is Zillow wanting them? And if you don't want to talk too much about this, feel free to cut me off here. But like, whenever you transfer them over to become like a Zillow Flex lead, like if you find them outside of that, transfer them in, it's because Zillow's trying to get them to use their preferred lending for, okay.
Yeah,
That's clever, but also I
because
could,
now you can do everything through Zillow.
yeah,
Like, you can do it all, and they have some pretty good like rates and programs and stuff, but it's just it's hurting my percentage, and so I'm not getting any leads. Now, here's the other sucky part. Not that it's anyone else's fault, but I'm doing what our team leads are coaching me to do. Like, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do that. Some of them will re-engage. I see that they re-engage. I'll call them, text them, and email them. I get no response. Or they're just not re-engaging at all. And so I have to move them over to a different stage where I just touch base with them like once every couple weeks or so.
yeah,
And so I'm stuck in a rock and a hard place because I'm not getting any of them to convert, and I'm not getting any new leads to hopefully convert them.
yeah,
And so that's why I like the listing that I have. They were a Zillow Flex lead, so they wanted to buy originally, but then they also wanted to list. So if I do the buy sell, there's that plus this 2 point or might as well be $3 million property. That if I can close on those, it'll bring my percentages up heavily. The sad part is though is again I'm only getting a certain amount of leads a month, and if I go meet with someone and they don't want to talk to the lender, like they don't want to talk to anyone, even on Zillow Flex, like I can't transfer them. Like I'm
yeah,
not allowed to transfer them if they don't want to. So that's again hurts my percentages. So I'm kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place where I can't get any more leads because I can't get the current ones that I have to close, and I still can't get them to talk to Zillow Flex.
yeah,
And again, I still haven't really, which is on me, but again, nurturing my own sphere and stuff like that to have people that I know to do business with. Again, I'm trusting in God, but if I'm to get a house one day, it's like I got to have steady income of like $60,000 to $75,000 a year coming in, depending on what her income looks like at the end of the day. And so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So
that being said, if you find yourself listening or watching this podcast and you are in the market for a new single family home, potentially even a new commercial space for your burgeoning, fast growing rocket ship business, reach out to Riley. Leave us a comment down below. He'll reach out to you. Don't you worry. Best man in the business. Don't you worry.
I'll do what I can, but it'll get better. I mean, the market just sucks. People haven't done their taxes yet. There's just a lot of things.
I know. I still got to do my taxes.
Same here. I haven't finished getting everything ready yet to send it over to my CPA. So I'm kind of just, I don't want to, but I have to.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Good thing is, still got about 2 months. It's like what? Tax are due like early April, right?
It's April 15th.
April 15th.
I'm
better
hoping
than
to have them done next week is what I'm hoping for. So
yeah,
we'll see. We will see.
Yeah. Well, to get things kicked off, do you want to go first? I know your first topic I see is the check that might be going out on behalf of DOGE, or I can kick things off with the end of humanity. I'm chill with whatever.
No, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, cool. Well, earlier this week, I saw a bunch of posts on X that I guess I hadn't seen in weeks prior for whatever reason. And it's these humanoid robots. Let me share the first video that kind of got me going down this rabbit hole. So I saw this video. Let me click play on this. I'll try to narrate it for those in audio land. So it's this very serene video of this humanoid robot that is wearing this nice sweater and sweatpants, and it's walking around this couple's house and helping them with the house chores. It's doing the laundry, making coffee, vacuuming the floors, contemplating the meaning of existence while cleaning a window, grabbing the groceries from them as they get back from the grocery store, acting as a sommelier, suggesting a bottle of wine, placing the keys back where they belong, and then gracefully sitting down on the couch, plotting how to kill the couple next. And I saw this video, and at first I was just scrolling through. I wasn't watching it on the computer. And when I first saw this, I'll loop the video again. I legitimately thought this was like a human, like just cosplaying as a robot, because I hadn't heard of this company before. It was called 1X. And I was like, hold up. To my understanding, I was aware of, like, I know Boston Dynamics. They've been making robots for years. Most famously, they make those like dog robots, that are doing crazy things. And I knew they were making some stand-up robots. I was aware of Tesla doing the Optimus robots, which those hit the press, I don't know, a couple months ago when Elon showed them off at some display thing he had. I think it was in Austin at the Tesla factory. But I had never heard of 1X before, and I was like, hold up a second. So I dug through their page on X. I found out, I was like, hold up, these guys have been doing stuff, it seems like a while, and they're just kind of coming out of the blue maybe to compete with Tesla. So 1X, they have what's called the Neo Gamma. And it does different things. It's very eerie because I think they've done a smart thing by covering it with like this cloth exoskin to make it seem like even more human, more realistic in a sense. So I saw this earlier in the week and I was like, oh, this is wild. I went down that rabbit hole, and I guess maybe the algorithm picked up on me wanting to know more about these, because then I came across this, which is from Figure, and they have what they call Helix, which is their AI that powers their respective humanoid robots. Yet another eerie demo video.
Hey, Figures,
for us.
can you come in?
It's two robots, humanoids.
Okay, I'd like to try something new. Even though this is the very first time that you've ever seen these items,
This guy's pulling groceries out of a Whole
I'd like
Foods
you to
bag.
use your new Helix AI and try to reason through where you think they belong in the scene, and then work together to put them away. Does that sound good?
So trying to get these humanoid robots to look at the groceries and not only know that they need to be put away and how they get put away, but dependent on what kind of grocery item they are. Are they eggs, bread, canned goods, dairy, something like that? They're able to now reason to say, where should these go? Do they need to be refrigerated? Do they need to go in the pantry? Do they go on a countertop somewhere? And so we have this company called Figure, and not only do they make these functional humanoid robots, but they are able to reason much more than at least I was aware that they would be able to. I know we have these LLMs like ChatGPT and Grok and all these others that, from our perspective, are extremely intelligent. But I was not aware that they had yet put this in a functioning humanoid robot that is able to act upon the reasoning skills that something like this can provide it. Let me pause it right there. I think this one might have had a couple other videos that were rather impressive. So it says, has a couple of items on the desk here for this robot to interact with. There's a sailor's cap, a Volkswagen Beetle, like a model toy car. I believe there's like a gold chain, like a rapper would wear. And then there's this like plush toy of a cactus with a happy face on it. And the caption on the video says, pick up the desert item. And it's able to interact and say, oh, I know which one's the desert item. Or pick up the cactus. Pick up the cactus toy. Pick up the desert item. And it's able to understand that the cactus toy is the desert item that it needs to interact with. And then a third video came on my horizon. This one is eerily scary. This one kind of went viral because of just how disturbing it is. I don't know if you saw this, Riley, pop up in your feed at all with anything, but this one's from Clone Robotics. And for those of you just listening, I'm going to do my best to describe it, and Riley, you correct me if you think I describe it differently. It looks like a humanoid robot in a sense, but like imagine the muscular build of a human, but it's all white. It's so eerie. It's hanging from like a hanger. I don't even know how to best describe this. It's like, this is very dystopian. It's an AI robot, but it's got a muscular build. So it's not like a ceramic, metal, plastic body or frame. It's muscular tissue, the same way that in a high school health and science class you would see like a health dummy, you know, where you can see the different body parts and the muscle tissue, but this is like an AI robot. Now, one other thing, actually no, I had two others. I forgot, one other one popped up for sure as well. This one's from Unitree. This one's kind of intriguing because this is another humanoid robot, but this one is able to like maneuver very uniquely compared to the other ones we've seen. So this is showing it's a humanoid robot starting on the floor. This is at real-time speed, so nothing's sped up here. It's showing how this humanoid robot could start flat on the table and work to get itself up off the ground. And then once it's upright, here in a second, you'll see it, of course, walking around right now. It walks around the same way we've seen these other humanoid robots walk around. Still very impressive nonetheless. But what if a human kicks it and is able to counterbalance the kick?
Can you turn that down just a bit?
Yeah, for sure.
So
I'll just mute it. But it's showing a guy basically with a boxing glove punching this humanoid robot, and how the humanoid robot is able to counterbalance itself, not to just fall over. I know Riley's having this reaction right now because this robot sat on a chair and basically folded itself up into a combat design. That way you can walk around with it and hold it. Now it's holding basically like a robotic kendo stick in a sense. Now picture an army of these. Now watch it delicately interact. Crack a nut. So it can do all these things. And what's funny about these is I saw actually just the other day, they posted another video. They have a dancing upgrade, so it can dance. And if you throw or try to knock it over, it'll continue to dance while counterbalancing everything that's going on with it. So now imagine if you had like 1,000 of these and they were armed with handguns, and you can't just like knock them over. Last but not least, just the one that we've all come to know and love. It's the Tesla
with wheels.
Optimus robots, which these kind of debuted. They've been talked about for a while, but they really debuted in mass
with
a couple months back. Tesla had this annual live event,
we started with
and they kind of lined them up and had them walk out. Some of them were bartenders at the event. Some of them were cocktail servers, all different types of job functions.
So if you extrapolate this, you're really going to have
something. I say all this and show all this to ask the question, what's next, and should we be concerned?
I mean, I don't think we should be concerned yet. I mean, depending on the material they're made out of, I'm almost positive. Like you could, if something was to happen, you could destroy the robot.
Now, one thing I do feel comfortable with is I know Elon Musk has been on record saying that his robots, the Tesla Optimus robots, have a kill switch built into them. So thankfully, those have a kill switch. I can't speak for the other brands. I would assume and hope and pray they also have kill switches, that the robots themselves will not become smart enough to understand how to disable their respective kill switch. But all I can think of is like iRobot with this. And I guess the other weird thing to think about is not even just, I don't even want to be alarmist about this. I probably came across initially as alarmist as like, hey, we're screwed. We're all going to die. But what's crazy to think is not all of these companies are going to make it. Of course, some of these will thrive. Some of these will die because this can't be a cheap project for some of these companies to navigate. I think Tesla has the funding just because Elon's behind it. The dude is getting ready to send people and things to Mars. Like he's got the funding and the public support there. Some of these other companies, I can't speak for all their financials, but I think what this tells me though is in our lifetime, these might become normalized. I remember reading that Elon wants these like Tesla Optimus bots to be priced in the like $25,000 to $30,000 range, which don't get me wrong, $30,000 is a lot of money, but it's not any more expensive than going to buy a new car, you know? And if you know that this thing can clean for you, put things up, like it can, the same way that these new AI chatbots can expedite text-based work for us, these are on the verge of being able to help expedite other medial tasks, maybe around the house, around the apartment, things like that. Who knows? Maybe these things can even, it starts at your house and you say, hey, go to the grocery store and go get these items for me. And it'll be able to pay for you through touch or tap to pay because you've integrated your Visa or MasterCard with it. And it can come home the same way that, have you ever seen the delivery, the unmanned delivery vehicles that can bring food to you? We could see these become normalized in the next, I don't know. I don't even want to say 10 years. What, 5, 10, 15 years from now, maybe?
I'm not as shocked at the fact that these things are becoming relevant. I'm going to be more shocked at the fact that people are actually going to spend the money on them. People who probably don't even have the money to spend are going to spend the money on them just for that little bit of easier stretch of life.
I didn't even think to pull this up. Here, let me pull this up real quick. This was actually, do you know who Kai Cenat is? He's like a streamer.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you saw a while back, say a couple weeks ago, he was I don't know if he purchased or was gifted one of these robots. And they were playing around with kicking it, trying to test the limits of like how much like force and inertia can you really apply to these things. And I wonder, is there going to be a point where this robot we see here getting almost by definition bullied, decides to take action for itself and fight back.
Well, I feel like it would have to be a lot bigger to fight back because it is a small robot.
It is, but some of these have the dexterity and the ability to grab items, right? And discern what items are for what purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
So what if it's like knife, gun, baseball bat?
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't usually like saying that people deserve it, but I mean, this is why I always say please and thank you on ChatGPT. That's all I'm
Dude,
saying.
me too. I'm just like, hey, when you take over, maybe somewhere deep in your memory, you'll remember that time that I said thank you and please when I asked you to write an essay for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm not like what they're doing. I mean, yeah, it's supposed to make people's lives easier, but the sad part is it's going to be the people who can just afford it that are going to buy them.
You know who are going to be the people that are going to be able to afford these? Those that get the $5,000 DOGE check or the future DOGE checks to come.
We're only going to get one, and that's only if they actually come. And
I don't know. What if it becomes a regular thing?
There was word that it might not even happen because they're thinking about putting the money towards something more beneficial.
Well, I saw they asked, what's his face? Was it the chief of staff for the Trump administration? That, to my understanding, maybe this has changed, but this last week, and I should have pulled up that video knowing that you were going to talk about this. He was asked about it in one of the White House press briefings, and he said, out of all the money they will identify as like cost saving, 20% to the American people, 20% to pay off the debt, and then the remaining 60%, 60, 70, yeah, so the remaining 60% will go to next year's budget. So that way you're lessening the debt by forwarding the money to next year's budget. And that was in a White House press briefing. Now, of course, things are subject to change. I think this is one of those things where, if I remember correctly, Elon said it first, kind of as a, yeah, we're going to send the money to the people. And then the meme became reality, or could become reality.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know. I mean, the way it would work, though, is the money would be just going back into the economy at the end of the day. But it depends on what people are going to spend it on. For me, I probably wouldn't spend it on anything. I'd probably invest it. It's probably where I would go with it. But
I was going to say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Just saying, like, it has to meet its $2 trillion savings goal to make the kickback feasible. And they said back in January it might not be doable. Granted, now they're saying it possibly can, but they're considering giving 20% of DOGE savings to citizens. And so they've been talking about it. But I honestly, I get it. The money has to, they have to use some of it to go back into the actual debt and everything. But I'm like, $5,000? Really? Like, of all the money that we've put in and that we've had to pay taxes on and all this other stuff that's happening, that's all we get is $5,000. Like, that's all we get. It's not really life-changing for a lot of people.
Here's the video I saw it's kind of I think a decent explanation. Now, a lot of this is subject to change, of course.
So, we're hearing about these DOGE dividend checks that would be 20% back to taxpayers, 20% to pay down the debt. 60% is left. Who gets that?
Well, the way that it works is when you achieve savings, you can either return it to taxpayers, you can return it to our debtors, or it can be cycled into next year's budget, and then it just lowers the overall baseline for next year. So in other words, you can just transfer it into the next fiscal window and then lower the overall spending level. And that means that you can achieve a permanent savings that way, and that reduces the deficit.
And when is it that people might see those checks?
Well, this is all going to be worked on through the reconciliation process with Congress that's going underway right now. As you've seen, the Senate's moving a bill, the House is moving a bill. The president has great confidence in both chambers to deliver on his priorities. I would just take this opportunity to note that President Trump has made a historic commitment to the working class of this country to fight for major tax relief and major price relief. And cutting spending, as DOGE is doing, and cutting taxes is the key to delivering on both of those promises. And President Trump is resolutely committed to doing both.
It'd be interesting if it becomes a normal thing, too. At least not normal, but as the work continues to find additional ways to cut potentially. As I say that, though, that is also a slippery slope of people assuming or getting in the habit of receiving government checks. The more,
You mean like they did for 2 years?
yeah, I think they're like two separate situations. So yeah, you had like the COVID stimulus checks, which I think we're just starting to feel the aftermath of that, because how much was it? It was like $4 trillion got printed for that.
Something like that.
I forget the number. It was some crazy statistic. But I wonder if they do the first check and they're like, okay, cool, that's fine. I mean, still it's $5,000. That's still $5K you didn't have before. But then if they do some more cuts or find some more quote unquote government waste, and then they send another check, does that form an unhealthy habit for people to be now cheering for additional cuts, maybe to where cuts shouldn't be made in order to then get another check, you know?
Possibly, but I also think my fear is this is already happening. People are just lazy. People don't want to work for their money. People want to just sit at home and do nothing and make money that way. And at the end of the day, if you can make a living, cool. If you can't, then get up and go get an actual job and do something. I mean, it's definitely very tricky, and it is a very slippery slope. And I believe that if we get this check, I mean, don't get me wrong, for us, I mean, $5,000, again, it's not going to buy us a house, but it'll put money back to us that we can then invest or do whatever with. And we haven't even filed our taxes yet. And I'm hoping to get a fat tax return this year from just, my business and everything like that. So I'm hoping to get like a good tax return back. And then that will go back. And if I can get these contracts closed, we'll be good. And the plan for us is to hopefully be able to go buy a house next year. But the fact still remains, though, is, and again, the question I'm gonna ask at the end, it has to do with a lot of this, because I don't know how this is all going to play out. That's the thing. It's like it's still unknown. It's still very early, and we don't know.
Now, let me ask you this. Based on what we do know, what would you do if you were the president right now, or you had the ability to make the decision on, okay, I see we've saved a certain dollar value by making cuts, and you have this pile of cash. Like, what would you do if you're knowing what you know? I'm sure there's things people know behind the scenes that we just don't know. What would you do though? Would you just place it all just to pay off the debt of the country, or would you do something else with it?
How much is it total?
Let me pull up the debt clock real quick,
because I can give you my answer better based off of knowing that.
The U.S. debt clock is 36,500 billion and
Wait,
counting.
where do you see that at?
Top,
US,
yeah, top left. I know at first I panicked. I looked at this and I was like, there's a lot of numbers. Which one is the number? It's the top left, U.S. national debt. And then everything else is the debt that adds up to make that. Now, what's interesting, I've noticed, I didn't realize this, there's a DOGE debt clock, I guess, or anti-debt DOGE plus clock of what they've theoretically saved, and it looks like 129 billion, which is a number.
That is a number. The thing is, that number to the left of that, though, is what concerns me, because that's how much the federal spending is.
Yep. Knowing that our budget is only 2 trillion and we're spending 7 trillion, that is a deficit.
And the thing is, I'll be honest with this. There are some things that some people are upset about, and I don't know all the intricacies, so that's why I'm not going to get into it. But people are like, oh, Trump is cutting federal funding for school systems. It's like, well, people aren't also having kids anymore. Like, we're not having kids. A lot of people that I know aren't having kids. So first of all, schools are going to probably become, I'm not going to say they're going to become obsolete, but homeschooling is probably going to become a lot more intuitive for bringing kids up. And so my thing too is, again, like, I'm going to say this for the end. Let's go on to the next
Okay.
one. So I'm going to say this for the end because, again, it's a topic that we could go down a rabbit hole on, and I don't want to go down that deep of a rabbit hole just yet. So I'll let you go on to your next one, and then if we'll touch base on the last couple. Two of
Yeah,
mine are
for
pretty
sure.
quick after that.
So the next two I have, one of them is actually kind of relevant to just the overall financial conversation of the country. This is something I've been trying to read between the lines and I am by no means like an expert in this field, but I am a conscious observer trying to understand what's really going on here. So I got an article from the New York Post, does the best job thus far because this is a developing story to describe what's happening. So the headline says, why banks are flying gold bars on commercial flights from London to New York City. It says President Donald Trump's tariff plans have prompted some of the largest banks in the United States and Britain to fly gold bars from London to New York City on commercial flights. Trump's plans to impose tariffs on U.S. trading partners, including a reciprocal tariff regime that's expected to be formalized by early April, and tariffs on the European Union he hasn't yet detailed, have spurred banks to relocate their gold reserves. That move has been driven by a price differential between gold sold in London and New York. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that the prices of gold per troy ounce have been roughly $20 lower in London since December. Now, London is the main trading location for the physical gold market, while New York is a hub for futures contracts. Now, due to the disparity, moving the gold from London to New York can help banks cover what would otherwise have been money-losing trades on gold futures by flying the gold across the Atlantic, allowing them to at least pair their losses or make more money by locking in new futures contracts. JP Morgan Chase and HSBC are two major players in the market for physical gold and have looked to capitalize on the opportunity, according to the Wall Street Journal. The amount of gold being flown across the Atlantic on commercial airlines is significant. JP Morgan said in a filing with CME Group's COMEX that it plans to move about $4 billion in gold, physical gold, from London to New York in the month of February. Commercial airline flights offer the most cost-effective way for banks to transport the gold from one location to the other, though the journey also necessarily includes the use of armored cars and security to ensure it arrives safely at its destination. Amid uncertainty over the economy and Trump's tariff plans, gold prices have surged to an all-time high in recent months. Gold futures were trading around $2,950 as of last Thursday and Friday, up more than 10% in 2025 to date and over 44% from a year ago at this time. I think it's very interesting, regardless of the whole tariff situation, that we have some of the biggest banks in the world flying physical gold bars from London to New York. Now, one other thing happened this week, I don't know if you heard about it, was that Elon Musk and DOGE, alongside Trump, wanted to go audit Fort Knox, which is where the U.S. stores its physical gold. And they wanted to see, I guess, one of two things. I have one of three things. If you go to Fort Knox, is the amount of physical gold that's supposed to be there, is it there? Or is there less gold than we say we have? Or the more interesting part, is there more gold there than we say is there? Because based on one of those three outcomes, not only our economy, but the global economy could be heavily impacted by that. And so part of me has to wonder, this movement of gold from London to New York, yeah, it is a little bit of a financial arbitrage to say I can buy physical gold for cheaper in London, have it in New York, resell it or sell futures on it for a premium markup, much more than what I bought it for in London. But at the same time, if we're going to audit Fort Knox, we really don't know how much gold is there. Could be less, could be more.
Well, we don't know now because the gold got there. So,
yeah, who knows? Who knows?
I'm just tired of fake governments, man. I'm just tired of our fake government. I'm tired of inflation. Like, I'm hoping that the tax cuts, I'm hoping gas prices eventually go down. I'm hoping all these things happen because the credit card debt's so high, people can't pay off their debt. Like, there's so much stuff that's happening. And I'm like, dude, this just, it blows. Like, it 100% blows because it's like, people just can't afford to live anymore. And a lot of the stuff that we're reading and seeing, it's like, I'm hoping that it does turn around. Like, I truly am hoping, not for just my sake, but for everybody's sake, because people just can't afford to live anymore, you know? And so, you know, your annual bills and budgeting, I mean, a lot of people can't live off, you know, low incomes. I'm surprised we do, but again, that's, you know, that's just how it works out. But it sucks, man. And it's like, we don't know what we don't know, and the government's never. And I get that the government probably doesn't want to tell us because they don't want to incite panic, but at the same time, they're probably just not telling us because they don't have to.
That is true. And one thing I wonder about, probably more often than I should, because I can't really do anything to change it, is over the next year, next 4 years, are we going to see where it comes to a tipping point where, you know, the economy has a bust, like a recessionary period, or are we actually able to turn this thing around and, you know, become profitable again? Basically, if you were to think of the United States as a company, we're not profitable right now. In a sense, we control our own destiny still, which is a huge benefit. We have more resources than really anywhere else on the planet. And when I say resources, I don't even exclusively mean like minerals and energy resources, just like the caliber of people we have here, second to none of anywhere else on this planet. But are we able to get to a correctionary period before, dare I say, shit hits the fan, you know? Like, I wonder with this administration, with all the cost cutting and whatnot, are we just trying to kick the can for whoever's next so it's not, you know, Trump's problem? Or is it going to become Trump's problem and he's willing to get it fixed? That's yet to be determined.
Okay, well, I guess I'll go ahead and ask this question now then,
Yeah.
because I mean, I still have 3 topics, but my last two are just meh, like it's just weather related. But do you think that our country still made the right decision in our current, and like how our current, like just our current administration?
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
do you think that all the things that they are quote unquote doing and having done, and all the spending cuts and things like that, do you think it is to actually benefit the American people, or do you think it's just to benefit themselves even more?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think so. Trump's in a unique position, right? So he got elected for his second term. He knows this is his last term. I know he jokes about the whole, haha, what about another term? And I know Time Magazine had the cover of him with a king crown. So people are, you know, flipping out about that thing because we're not a monarchy. We're not going to be. Stop worrying, folks. So it puts Trump in a unique position where he's not worried about re-election, right? Like, this is the last term, unless there's like some weird act of God, which I doubt is going to happen, where there's a third term. I think was it FDR was the last one that was a more than 2-term president. So Trump doesn't have to really make friends in a sense because he doesn't have to win another election, which means it allows him to make tough choices that could be for the benefit of the country, such as cutting costs, cutting the fat, the waste, whatever metaphor you want to use for that or analogy. But at the same time, it does make him look good. It makes the team behind DOGE look good if you're like, hey, like we talked about this, I think, maybe 2 episodes ago, where I pulled up the list of the initial findings when they went through, when they audited USAID, and they were like, they found all these very controversial things that they were funding overseas that maybe our tax dollars shouldn't have been funding. And so they're able to find those and say, look, the people that voted for me, this is what we found. This is what we're doing. So it's kind of like a rah-rah moment.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they are saving money. And I know it's like the debt's in the trillions, and they're only saving billions. It's difficult to say like, oh, it's not really that much money, but you got to start somewhere, right? You can't just because the numbers are so small or so large, you can't just put your head in the sand and say there's no hope. You have to start somewhere. And there's a compounding effect to this where if you save 100 billion every year, like that's chipping away at it, right? Because 100 billion this year, it could be another 100 billion the year after that. So then it becomes 200 billion. And we're still so early into this first year of the administration. We have like another year and a half before the midterms. There could be a chance that the Republicans lose control of the House or the Senate in the midterm, so DOGE could be swept under a rug. Who knows? So I think it's a little bit of both. I think he's legitimately saving money, and it's a good thing. But at the same time, he's using like the carrot and the stick. And I think it has the perception of causing damage because it is disrupting the status quo. And a lot of people get scared by change. You know, even if it's change for the better, change is scary for some.
Well, that's kind of my okay. Like, let me ask the question: do you think he's a wolf in sheep's clothing?
I don't think so. I don't believe so. But I know some people legitimately think that. I know some people legitimately are concerned that he is a dictator in the waiting. He's the Antichrist. They have a term for it. They call it Trump derangement syndrome. I don't think that's the case. I just think so there's another part of, you want to get real kooky here for a second?
Go for it.
Okay. So
It's Unscripted Company after all.
It is Unscripted Company. So buckle up, boys and girls. I think there's a level deeper to some of this as well. So there's also news this week that I think it was the Attorney General for the United States has the Epstein client list on their desk, waiting to release it. So I think some of what I'm about to say is in relation to Epstein, or just this it's not a cartel. What do you want to call it? This underworld of existence.
Syndicate.
The syndicate. That's a good term. Syndicate. We know Trump doesn't, nor has ever, to my understanding, done drugs or drank alcohol, right? He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke, stuff like that. We know he had an aversion to Jeffrey Epstein, to what the public knows at least. I have to wonder, though, if Trump is fully aware of or allegedly had some role in whatever that ring is. I don't think we've even begun to crack the nut on what that is, the syndicate, right? But I have to wonder if part of this is the first time he got elected, there was such a schism in politics. Like, even the vast majority of Republicans were like, we don't like this guy. The entire news media apparatus hated him, tried to go at him from every angle, right? And I think there's a reason for that. I wonder, and this is going way out there, I could change my opinion on this down the road, but part of me has to wonder, I think he knows the names. I think he knows who partook in all this. Because if you think of the other names of who else was all in this, like, we know Bill Clinton was part of this. We know Bill Gates was a part of it. Stephen Hawking, like a lot of very prominent people allegedly were a part of this. And so I can't help but wonder if like he knows where the bodies are buried. Now the question is, did he partake in the burying of bodies or not? If he did, he's no better than the rest. He's just his own, just a different version of it, right? But at the same time, part of me wants to think he means well, and he has dirt on others to prevent them from truly going after him, other than the attempts on his life we saw later or earlier last year.
Mm-hmm.
So my gut tells me he's not a wolf in sheep's clothing, but I think he's definitely aware of the realities that you and I will never know. We see inklings of it through like the Epstein situation.
Right.
but I don't know, it's a tricky thing to say, because like my opinion a year, 2 years from now could be totally different based on, we're still kind of early into this administration, and it's been a bumpy ride so far. But I like to think it's for the better, because the way I view it also is from the perspective of, if you have a new CEO at a failing business, he's going to act pretty intensely, or he's going to act with great intent to make sure that you prevent the company from failing, right? If that means cutting department heads, slashing budgets, firing a third of the company, like, it happens. It happens all over corporate America. I mean, heck, we're going through this huge wave over the last year and a half, 2 years, of all these tech companies cutting headcount because they're realizing that they're burning too much cash. Their budgets have gotten too large, and they're trying to shore up the books. It's the same thing with the country. We've been spending too much for too long, and something's got to change. And I don't know. What do you think? What's your thoughts?
Kind of, I want to say similarly, but you know, like I don't spend all day researching like, oh, what's this? Like I know about what's happening, what's going on. Like like we send stuff back and forth, whatever the case may be. But kind of goes back to some of the stuff I've already said, is like, I'm hoping and praying that all the things that are happening now are actually going to make that difference. But at the same time, he could do all this stuff, and we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now, 3 years from now, before his term is up. We don't know what's going to happen, but he could do all this stuff, and then all it takes is for, and again, I don't like swaying either way, but considering how our previous group of people were, it could just immediately go back to the exact way it was in the next term. It's like more spending, sending money to other countries, doing all these things that are going to cause inflation to go up again. And then we're going to be back to where we started before Trump got in office. With that being said, how long is it actually going to take for all these things to happen, to actually take effect, so that gas prices actually go back down, so that people can afford their rent, people can afford to buy a house? Because and again, this comes from just a real estate mindset too. It's like, all these houses that are being built right now, just in the counties that I circle around, and we still can't get ahead of the curve because they're building all these high-priced houses that nobody can afford.
Yeah.
And somehow people can afford them, and people are buying them, but then they're not building any houses that are, like, I think the average price of a home now, I think, is in the 400s. I think it's like $412,000.
Yeah, that sounds right. For like the U.S. average is like 412.
Yeah.
I want to say I might have saw like 420 the other day.
Yes, I saw something like that, and I'm like, that went up from a year ago when it was like $360,000. $366,000 was the annual average price of a home in America, and that has gone up $50,000, $60,000 since then. That's not normal. Like, people can make all the excuses that they want, but until you actually put the quality back behind the house should not be worth that much.
And you have rates as high as they are with that too. It's one thing if that price of like housing goes up, but then we also see the cut in rates, or vice versa, that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
how
like we're
supply and
seeing
demand is supposed to go, but it's not. Both are just going up. And so even people who were looking at new builds, like, at first I wasn't a big new build person. Like, I didn't want to go for a new build. I didn't want to, but
I wasn't either. Yeah.
For us to probably get a house, like, we're going to have to go with a new build, and we're going to have to live in it for an extended period of time. But at the end of the day, if I own a house and I have a house, I don't care. Like, I have a house, but it's, even then, people can't afford those. And it sucks because I love Denton, but I'm worried that depending on the time frame, I may get priced out of Denton in the next 5 years if this doesn't actually get corrected. If this housing market just does not get corrected. And honestly, coming from an agent, and I know people are probably going to be like, oh, what's it? I hope that there's a housing market bubble that just pops. I hope there is. Give us low pricing housing. I don't care if I'm paying a 6.5% interest rate. Give me like $250,000, $300,000 housing again. Like, that's, and a lot more people could actually afford to buy them. They can get good quality homes for the price that you're paying. But kind of going back to that, it's just like people just can't afford to live. And I hope that all this stuff that they're doing isn't just for the benefit of them, but I hope that it's actually for the benefit of the people. And like, I hope that there's always going to be those people that just don't care, and that they have their sights set on like, I hate this man, I don't want anything to do with him. But they're looking at it in the wrong way. I'm looking at it as in like, I want to be able to survive and live. And if I'm in the red every single month paying my bills, then that's not good. Like, that should not be the case. And so there's just a lot of stuff happening. But as far as Trump goes, I truly don't think he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, but some of the stuff is like, they're doing a lot of cutting right off the bat, which again, like, you kind of go back to what you said, but how long is it going to take for that to actually make a difference in the American people's lives? Like, is it going to be all the way up until you're like, about to be out of office, and then someone comes in there and just completely undoes every single thing that you just did? Like, what's going to actually happen? And that's kind of what makes me worried for our country, in a sense. Like, is anyone going to ever actually be able to afford to live ever again, really? Like, have that cushion, have a retirement, like all these different things? Or are we just going to be stuck in a time, like stuck in the ways of, scraping and scrounging to get what people actually need to get, so I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see, because again, we're only a month in, and I'll be honest, it doesn't even feel like a freaking month with everything that's already happened and being uncovered and showing up and everything. But we'll see what happens. I mean, after the first year's over with, we'll just kind of gauge to see where we're at in our country, and kind of see where everyone's at, honestly. So,
yeah, one thing I was thinking about while you're saying that is, I mean, you're spot on about the whole, no matter what's done, is it just going to go back to the way it was, or, ramp back up again? Because things are so polarized, I guess. Well, I say they're polarized, but really it's kind of like Trump and the MAGA movement is what's causing the polarity, which maybe in some ways that polarity is needed, but in a sense of, cutting all these jobs and departments, just the next person, just bring them all back. But then we kind of see the inverse of that, because I was reading into, I forget the number, I was trying to pull it up real quick, but all the IRS is having a bunch of headcount slashed here. I think that he might have already done it, if not this upcoming week. When people were digging into it, a lot of those individuals were hired under the Biden-Harris administration. So we're almost seeing the inverse of it too, to where a lot of people were hired during the previous administration and now fired in the next one. Do we just see that happen again when the other party comes back into power? So it's like, lights on, off, and just like, that's unsustainable. And also, like, there's no job security in that. But also, it's a difficult thing for me to grapple with, because the federal government, to work for the federal government, you shouldn't have job security for life working for the government, because you do need fresh ideas. You need, what am I trying to say here? You need fresh ideas coming in. You need a streamlined efficiency. You need to have,
you shouldn't be a career politician.
Yeah, you don't want to have people coming in there that are like, yeah, I'm going to sit at this desk for the next 50, 60 years and think I'm unfireable. The same way that if you work in Silicon Valley for any tech company, like there's always a healthy fear of like, if I don't do my job adequately or above and beyond, like I could have my position threatened for someone who is better at the job than I am. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying everyone should always live with that fear in the back of their head, but there is something relatively healthy about that, because it keeps you honest. It keeps you, doing your best, I guess.
Right.
And if you are an employee of the federal government, wouldn't we want that mindset of, we want people that are actively working to do their best possible job and effort, working for the United States of America? Like, this isn't like a company they're working for. They're working for the freaking United States of America. And even the desk jobs are still very important at the end of the day, because, it is a bureaucracy, for better or worse. It's just how streamlined and smooth is that bureaucracy. And if there is like bloat, it should be cut the same way it happens in any other company.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like,
But
was
yeah,
trying-
but
Did
Oh,
you
go
see?
ahead.
Have you seen the graphs and charts of all the Zillow listings popping up in Washington D.C. ever since DOGE started doing
oh
it
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Yeah, there's like all these $1 million homes. Here, let me throw
That
this up.
guess what? Nobody can afford to buy.
Well, the other thing too is the people that are trying to sell are selling because they're fearful that they're going to lose their job or already did lose their job. And it's not like they're rehiring for the same position. They're cutting the positions. So who is there to buy them up?
If I'm being like, I don't want to say this in like a mean way, but it's like if you were working in a position that there wasn't a need to be a career for that position, that it should have been a term-based thing. Like, I never want anyone to lose their house or anything like that, but it's
Yeah.
like that should never have been a thing anyways. Like,
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah. It's like, cause I don't want anyone to, cause I'm sure there are people that are legitimately doing their job to the best of their ability, but
yeah,
their job didn't serve the best purpose to begin with. So it's,
no,
you're kind of set up for this situation, unfortunately. And I've heard commentary online that some of the jobs in the federal government were created to help pad the stats of job creation for the prior administration. And I get that. And it kind of sucks that people find themselves in that situation. Sorry, I feel like I interrupted you. You were saying something.
no,
but-
no, no. I mean, you're not wrong. It's just so much is happening right now, like on such a quick, fast-paced environment that people are getting so much information thrown at them and they don't know what's true and what's not. Same as, pretty much the whole election year. And I just think the American people just want guidance. Like there shouldn't be career politicians. Nancy Pelosi, you should not still be serving in an office. You should not be making $280,000 a year and have a net worth of like,
millions.
millions of dollars. Like that should not be a politician. A politician should be making like a traditional salary, like most people, like $75,000 a year. And there was like all these talks about insider trading. Apparently there's some stuff that's coming out about that too. Like they're on the chopping block for that. Like they're finding out that some of these people did insider trading.
Oh,
and
absolutely. There's if I don't know if you can follow them on X, but there's an account called the Nancy Pelosi Stock Tracker, and there's these websites out there that track the publicly available information of what stocks these politicians are buying and selling, and they have amazing track records because of course they don't know anything that's about to happen in terms of legislation, but they just so happen to buy stocks for these companies that are about to get additional federal funding or lesser regulations, things that make it ideal for that business to grow at a much more rapid rate than the average company. And it's Nancy Pelosi, I guess technically her husband, is has the greatest track record of stock trading almost of all time. It's wild.
And so that right there, like, I we did an episode on this too, like, and I guess I could technically ask you this question again also. I don't want to stay like talk about this too much, I mean, but definitely good conversation. But do you think the American dream actually still exists? Like, do you think we'll ever get back to a point where the American dream is, it doesn't have to be marriage with kids or anything like that, but just what people perceive as like just being able to afford their bills, being able to pay off some debt, being able to afford a house. Like, do you think that we're ever going to get back to that?
I think we're still there. I kind of have a complicated response because like it is easy to fall in that trap. I know I've fallen in it before too, where you look around, you see the prices of things, you see what you have coming in, and you're like, none of this is possible. How is this possible? Because you see people online talking about how they're doing and whatnot. And you're like, what's happening here? I think everyone has their own interpretation of the American dream, I guess.
Right.
The way I'm interpreting it kind of is you own a home, you have a car, you have a significant other, you got a pet. Like, it's kind of like, you have your own family. It doesn't even involve kids. If you want kids, you can have them, stuff like that. I think what we've fallen into, though, is we assume our version of the American dream is the same geographically as our parents' generation or even the generations in between that, where we're kind of jaded because we see the baby boomer generation bought a house at a certain price, at a certain interest rate.
A nickel.
I mean, yeah, something like that for a very low dollar value in what are now major urban centers. Like I saw it first. I mean, you kind of see it in North Texas as well, but like I see it in Austin, but I'm thinking like Frisco, or I'll use Austin as an example here. Like you have someone who bought a house in the 70s, even the 80s in Austin before it was really a major metropolitan center. It was a small government town that had a university. And then they rode the wave of Michael Dell creating Dell Technologies. Motorola came to town. Apple came to town. Tesla came to town. Indeed came to town. Like all these tech companies popped up, and now, like, it's not cheap to live here. And so, of course, their house skyrockets in value. Like the neighborhood I grew up in, I remember seeing, like, when my parents bought the house in a town on the outskirts, it was like $75,000. Well, those houses sell for $300,000-$500,000 now. And that was just in '93. Yeah. So it happens fast. But I will say, I think the American dream is alive and well if we're not willing to live in major urban centers. They're still like, man, I used to daydream. I kind of know where my immediate future is going to be, like geographically. But there was a point in time where I was like, well, like what if I lived in like Waco or San Angelo or Tyler or Lufkin or, you know, these smaller towns that they have an airport, they have an HEB, or they have a decent grocery store. Like they still have the amenities there,
right?
But it's not Austin. It's not DFW. It's not Houston. It's not San Antonio is still affordable. And it's the second largest city in Texas.
It's also a very dangerous city to live in too.
Not necessarily.
It's in the top 10.
Okay. But yeah, it's also the second largest city in Texas though. So, I mean, like Houston's much more dangerous than San Antonio, I would imagine, statistically. But like, you're still going to live there, right? You're not going to complain. You're like, oh, I'm still here. Like San Antonio is also very sprawling. So there's parts of it that are very good. And then you have parts that are not so good.
Well, I considered San Antonio at one point. Like me and her actually considered moving there, but I was like, it's too far from family. So
yeah, no, I get that. Like if you're trying to drive up to Northeast Texas, like that's a trek. But like there are parts where like you can go get an affordable house and live a perfectly good life with a good school district, and like it's the American dream. And also with the opportunities of like remote work. I know remote work's kind of all over the place. It's expanded and then it retracted, and it's certain job fields do better in remote than others. So I think the American dream is alive. I don't know if it's well, but it's alive. But you do have to, it can't be, you can succeed in America, but I don't know if it's the dream that you dream. I don't know if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is like,
well, yeah, I mean, know what? I don't think anyone really ever expects to be where they're at. Like, I'll be honest with you, I don't care. Like, if I don't end up with 10 acres, whoop-de-doo. Like, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like, with the price of land, unless I just happen to luck into it or just go pay somebody's unpaid taxes on their land and just get the deed to the land that way, which I see people do. For me, it's like, you know, I'm not a fan of HOAs and I'm not a fan of subdivisions, but hey, if it gets me a house, it gets me a house. For other people, that's different. You know, it just depends. But, you know, we're probably not going to be buying a house in Denton. Like we'll still be around Denton, but we'll probably be like Justin or Ponder.
It's crazy how expensive Denton has gotten just in the last decade. Like whenever I was still up there, I was contemplating, I was like, you know what, if I sat cash for a year or two, I was like, I can maybe make this happen. Like if I had a roommate to help offset some of the mortgage, but that happened fast. That housing price increase in Denton happened so fast.
There's talks about that right now, like with like the city and like the upcoming planning for this year and them trying to cut some stuff and things like that to hopefully bring prices down. But the thing is Denton, like no one can afford to live in Denton. Like there's so many houses that are on the market that people can't afford to buy. So people have had to take them off the market or whatever. And but just as a whole, like, I mean, I'm like, for our location, for where we're at, I like it, but I hate it too because they're about to start the next highway project,
Yeah.
and that's not about to be fun where we live at. Um, but I mean, at the end of the day, if we compare our bills, but it's just getting over that hump, it's like if our all of our bills combined are what the price of a mortgage is, then we need to be making double that every month just to afford the mortgage. So that's kind of where, again, it's possible. The thing is, though, is not everyone's situation is the same. Um, if I could sell one house a month, that would be us buying a house right there. Like if I can consistently close on one house a month, or at least like one big deal, like every couple months, that's a house. But everyone's situation is different. The pricing is different. There's so much that's happening. I've considered Sanger. Sanger is also another area that we've considered. My thing is, I was like, I don't want to be too far up there. Again, we're still just kind of figuring that out. But as far as the people as a whole, again, kind of back to like what we talked about as far as the spending and all the different changes in our administration and everything, I'm just hoping that, I guess if you want to say a traditional American dream, like this is like every person's thought, like I want to own a house one day, I want to do this, want to do this. Traditional American dream. People just want to know if that's ever going to be attainable for them ever again. And there are people out there that are younger than both of us that probably have like 2 or 3 houses, don't know how, but they somehow achieve it. And
What I think, here's my official advice, and I didn't take my own advice because I kind of lucked into the situation I'm in currently. But I think what the younger millennials and the Gen Z generation that's coming of age here, I think in order to achieve the American dream, a healthy American dream, I think they need to find towns and cities. Here's the formula, I think, in order to achieve the American dream in the modern era. You need to find cities and towns that were thriving at the turn of the century, 19th into the 20th century. Potentially they had their heyday post World War II. So they have a large housing supply from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. They've seen a downturn as the majority of the population flocked to the east and the west coast in these new, tech cities and tech hubs. So they have an excess housing supply. And you need to find these towns that have at least a university, because that means there's a major employer there and there's always young people coming in there, even if it's for a short span of time. And so that brings with it a unique artistic community and young thoughts and ideas. But you can come in there and buy a home that's relatively affordable. And you can, I'm picturing, like we kind of saw this with Detroit. Detroit bottomed out whenever the auto industry left. Now it's kind of like a thriving area for artisans and crafty people. Waco had its heyday whenever Chip and Joanna Gaines did the Fixer Upper show. I mean, they're still thriving. Waco's still thriving to this day. And they have, Waco's heyday was back in like the 1940s and 50s until that tornado hit it back then. And like San Angelo, I'm thinking Texas in particular. San Angelo is really good because it's got San Angelo State out there. You have Tyler because UT Tyler's out there, and Tyler was a big town back in the day. I think there's a lot of opportunities in towns like that, but everyone wants to live in these major urban centers, and I can't fault them for that. But there's a price that comes with that.
Yeah.
Denton would have made my list of what I just said up until the last 5-6 years when COVID jacked up prices like crazy.
Yeah. And like I said, that's why we're thinking, pretty much anywhere in Denton County, like aside from Sanger. We've considered Aubrey. Aubrey's got decent pricing for some housing. So we've considered Aubrey or Crossroads area, something like that. But 380 is I'm good. And then there's like Corinth and stuff like that, but that's still pricey. So it's like, I've even thought about Gainesville, but that's still a 30 to 45 minute drive on some days to get to Denton.
Yeah.
I'm good. So Sanger's kind of like our only option unless we just, again, luck into a situation where, nowhere near putting pressure on Dana, but, unless she lucks into a, awesome, like six-figure a year job or $80,000 a year job, we could still live on $40,000 a year, and I could take that other 40 and just put it back into an account. And then once we save up that for like 2 years, then and whatever I make in that time, then we can just go buy a house.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I think a lot of people are, is like they don't have the ability to even save. They don't have the ability to put back. Don't get me wrong, new builds are good, but they require you to put down minimal amount. Like you don't have to put hardly anything down, and they buy your rates and concessions and closing costs and all these things, which is all awesome. But what about when you actually get into that house though? Like, are you going to be able to actually afford the payments consistently, or like what's going to happen? And so people have to take a lot of things into consideration. But it's just people can't pay off their debt. Like there's so many things that are happening right now. Like I'm ready to pay off my student loans. Like I'm so close, so very close that if I could close on just 3 or 4 properties, like I could pay off all my debt like immediately.
Yeah.
And not even have to worry about it. I'll probably still keep the payments for at least a bit because it's very minimal, but still. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens with our administration. We'll see what happens with our current area. But if Denton keeps going up in pricing, I don't know what's going to happen, man.
Yeah.
Don't know what's going to happen. And it sucks because our rent keeps going up because of all the other crap that they're building to Razor Ranch. And I'm like, this should not affect us. This should not affect us, but it does. So,
yeah. Well, with that being said, I think this episode might be in the books. I want to give a quick shout out real quick for those who haven't done it. I'm going to head on over to unscriptedcompany.com. You can always see our latest podcast episode there, plus all the different other websites that you can find us at: YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Substack. And hey, look at this. You can actually buy some cool apparel as well. Nice way to support the podcast. Easiest way, which is also free. If you made it this far in the episode, don't forget, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow. Let us know what your thoughts are down below, at least on my end. Tell me, what do you think? These humanoid robots, are they coming for us? Should we be concerned? Is this an iRobot type situation? Riley, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there a question you want the people to answer for this episode?
do you think getting a $5,000 DOGE check would benefit you greatly? Do you think it could actually be a detriment to people in our country? Do you think it's a very steep mountain to climb, or like we're kind of like tiptoeing across that edge if we just start giving people money back? Do you think it's going to really hurt the people even more, or do you think it's actually going to be a benefit? Definitely want to know y'all's thoughts down in the comments on that, and kind of what y'all's thoughts are on just what's unfolding now. Again, it's only been a month again, and it feels like it's already been 6 months to a year that all this stuff's happening, but everything's moving so quick, which, to be fair, I do like. They're just on it. Like they're on it. They're trying to make things happen. And that's good, because usually a lot of presidents that get in office, like, yeah, they sign a bunch of things, but they're very slow to act on stuff, versus, Trump's like, hey, like I got in here, I'm doing this stuff, and whether you like it or not, like it's hopefully going to, that's one thing I do like, is like he is thinking of it like whether you like it or not, I'm doing this because I truly believe this is actually going to benefit the American people. So like that's what I'm hoping and praying for, is that it'll actually benefit people. It'll put more money back into the economy, and therefore stimulate more jobs and actually create meaningful jobs for people that can actually have a career that aren't just working from whatever to whatever. But let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you guys in the next one.